Hello guys, and welcome to another video, and today I'm going to be discussing my R34 Skyline. So, let's go back about 2-3 weeks. I would have posted 2 videos at London Raceway of the car on the track. Now, some of you may have noticed 2 things about the car. First being that it had a lack of power, and second was that it lacked grip. So I'm going to address, where the car is now, what's happening with it, where I would like to see the car in the next couple of months, and when are we going to sit on the track again. So the power issue stems from the fact that the car, I spent the majority of my ownership of the Skyline. I spent a lot of money on suspension, braking components, fixing up the car in terms of rust in the interior. So I had a thought that rather than spending money at the start on chasing huge power, getting the 280, 290 kilowatts and trying to make the 400 horsepower that I dream of, I should spend my money on, brakes, pads, arms, bushes. Everything's shot. I mean, this car is from 1998, so everything's factory. It's all ruined. There's noises everywhere. Things are creaking. It's horrible, right? So for the first couple of years of ownership, and I've had the car for about 6 years now, I would have spent the majority of my time doing all the suspension stuff and getting the car set up to how I want it. So I left the turbo alone, and it was the factory OP6. It had the factory manifold, factory inlet plenum, and I only really put on the front mount towards the end of the ownership, which was in the last couple of months, because I wanted to start preparing for more power because I've already finished everything else. So the car at the moment, I've just completed the dyno day yesterday with the tuner. So what I did the last 2 weeks is I got all the parts together. So I decided now is the time to do the exhaust manifold, because not only did I have leaks, I mean, the gaskets were old. The previous owner was just a mess. So the car had RTV everywhere. There were so many issues. Like when it started, you could smell fuel. You'd also, you'd start to, even sitting at the lights, you'd just start to smell the exhaust gases. And I'm 100% sure that, when I took off the exhaust manifold, the gasket just fell apart. And to be honest with you, I don't think the torque was correct as well. So I stripped off the hot side of the car, took off the exhaust manifold. I did a full gasket service. And I purchased a Hypergear high flow turbo. So we used an R33 GTST turbo for the donor. We did the G3 high flow service, which means that the turbo is capable of making up to 450 horsepower, providing that you have a pretty, a decent free flowing setup, which includes your intake and all that sort of stuff. So we whacked that in. We used the factory dump, not the factory dump, sorry, I used my existing dump that I had as part of my full exhaust system. Factory manifold stayed. I was thinking about, should we do a 6 boost? I love the sound of them. They sound amazing, especially when you have that with a wastegate, and a screamer pipe. It's just so good. But again, it's not money that's the issue. It's just the time and the labor and the car being able to, going to shop to shop to shop. So I think it's easier if I just do the high flow turbo. I can still use the factory dump pipe. It's going to be the same location. So I decided, cool, that's what we're going to do. And so I bolted that all up. So I did all the full gasket service. Then I decided to attack the cold side. Now the car still had the factory injectors, and as some of you may know or maybe don't know, the injectors are pretty much limiting in terms of power. You might be able to get 220 kilowatts if you're lucky. So I decided, look, I don't want to play the gamble. And on top of that, the idle air control unit the gasket was gone as well, and wasn't even really a gasket, it was just RTV. Again, previous owner. The inlet manifold, intake manifold, as you call it, the gasket was there, but it was ruined. It was RTV. And for some reason, so you've got a row of bolts on the front of the intake manifold, and then you've got 1, 2, 3 on the back. So the middle bolt snapped. So it wasn't even holding it together. So there was only 2, and then the ones at the front. So I pulled it off and did the gasket, went good. And then I upgraded the injectors to 1000cc Bosch injectors, so they're about 980cc really. So I swapped them in. At the same time, all the fuel lines, all replaced all that. Made sure I replaced all the bolts as well because he cable tied the fuel feed lines together. I don't know why, instead of just using the factory holes that were there to use screws and stuff. Fix all that up. Put the injectors back in. Put the intake manifold back on to put that back together. Put all the new gaskets, all that side on the cold side. Then I decided to do as part of the tuner recommended that I do the hard wire for the fuel pump. And for those of you who are interested in why you do that is because without the mod, you get a fluctuation in power to the fuel pump. And if you're chasing big power and you want that to 250, 260, 280, 290 kilowatt, even further, you really need to make sure the fuel pump is getting consistent voltage, so 13 volts and more. So I decided to do that modification. So I did some wiring. I had to also install a Z32 airflow meter because the factory one is a limiting factor. So I wired all that in, replaced the intake pipe from the turbo. Instead of going for a metal intake pipe, I opted for a silicone pipe just because of time. I didn't really want to have the car again sitting and waiting for weeks while I try to get things sorted. So we got that done. And then I pretty much did some of the other little small things, like I fixed up the battery. Some of the cables are all sort of munted just over the years, I guess. It's just overuse. And the previous owner, again, just doing stupid shit with the car. So everything's clean. And at this point, everything is done. Now, the limiting factor of going into the next stage of the build, which is, focusing on power now, is the fact that I decided to retain the factory airbox. And the reason for that is because in Australia, and I'm sure you probably already know from the accent, is while I do understand the modification laws, I wanted to get as close to them as possible. And that meant, I didn't want to install a pod filter, even with a cover. I just felt, look, if I keep the factory airbox, I know I'm going to be restricted in power at first until I decide to upgrade later in the future, but at least I'm sort of avoiding all the trouble. So I don't really want to have any issues with police. I don't want the trouble. So left the airbox in, but I obviously upgraded the intake pipe because the factory pipe with an RB, it's sort of soft and higher boost pressure will actually suck it in. So if you're making 250, 260, it's just gonna and you're not gonna make any more power, and it's just gonna go down. The other limiting factors of the build would have still been the intake pipe, being that the size isn't obviously the 3 to 4 inches that the manufacturer for the high flow recommends, and the front mount being a return flow by Blitz does have a pressure drop issue, so I was obviously not going to make that much power anyway because of that. So skip to yesterday. Went to the dyno, and car had a few issues to begin with, so obviously needed to bleed the cooling system. We had a misfire problem, even though I replaced the spark plugs. The coil packs are Spitfires, by the way, so it wouldn't have been an issue there, and they're relatively new anyway. So we replaced them with BCP R70S, I believe, and they're a 0.8 gap, so brand new plugs again. This is the second set of plugs in a week. Don't know why they didn't work the last time, but just bought them again. I was like, whatever, we'll swap them in. It takes like 10 minutes. So plugs in, car's good. Drive to the dyno, no dramas, doing a road tune, and we're already seeing that there obviously are boosting issues. There's leaks, so we spent another 20-30 minutes getting all the clamps tightened because, look, I guess over time they've just come loose, and maybe, being me putting the car back together, I've just sort of gone, yeah, whatever, I'll just screwdriver it, no problem. Some of them are pretty loose, to be honest, and that's where I was losing time and power and that sort of stuff. So fix that up. Car goes on the dyno. Now, on pump 98, and with my restrictions in place, we got the car running on 19.2 pounds of boost. And it's making, considering the dyno was low reading, it makes 245 real world kilowatts and makes 500 newton meters of torque. So while the power figure it's actually pretty decent for the car. Like, it feels incredibly fast. There is still room to go. So if I come back later and I decide, which is where I see the car in the next couple of months is, look, I would like to actually upgrade the intake to a better free-flowing setup. So I want to get rid of the airbox, but I want to try and retain that sort of factory look if I can. So I'm going to try and source some parts. I will upgrade the front mount to maybe a Plaza Man or something. I haven't really figured out what I'm going to do yet. just to sort of help me push that car a little bit further. So the turbo can obviously make way more power than what it is now. But I guess, you know, I'll get used to it, get used to the torque, and just try and find the sweet spot with the car. But it did really well. So the car is now making more power. All that's left at the moment is to address the handling issues. So the car's setup is done in terms of camber, and I'm pretty happy with the height. So the guards at the front, they've been backyard rolled, so they're all right, but they're not really the best. The rear is a factory, and for those of you who probably have seen an R34, they have this really, the lip is just really bad. Like, it's just a very thin piece. Like, it's not thin, but it's a double panel, and the lip is like that, and you got your guard like that. So it just chews your tires. And about 2 years ago, I had 808Rs, and I just destroyed the tire. Like, it's gone. So I need to roll the rears as best as I can, but I am planning to do a wide body conversion on the car. If you want to see what the car looks like at the moment, you can follow me on Instagram. You can have a look at the photos and videos that I do post of the car. So the wide body, all those parts have already been ordered. They're all coming. I'm also converting the front to genuine GDR. I've already got the all genuine Nissan front end, all the plastic stuff. So I'm just waiting on little few pieces here and there. And when I roll the guards, I'm going to put my old wheels back on, which if you go on the bottom of my Instagram page, you'll find that I had SVNR, the rotors. Look, doesn't matter, the rotors, they do all right. Haven't broken them any so far. They were 18 by 9 plus 18. Issue was they were hitting the guards, and obviously I can't run the 265 that I wanted to, so I bought 18 by 8.5 plus 30 for front and rear. So I run a square setup. It's just how I prefer the car, to be honest. So roll the rears, put the old wheels back on, get the 265 tires to the front and the rear. We'll lower it a little bit, and it's done. And once we get the car back on the track, you guys will see some more videos. Preferably at probably Sydney Motorsport Park, because it is a larger circuit, and those smaller circuits do tend to, you know, I can't really with this tune anyway. So first, second, you'll hit 15, maybe 16 pounds of boost, and when you hit third and fourth, you'll be hitting 19 to be hitting that peak power. Unfortunately, the circuit that I posted and I was recording at, it's not really, you know, with the little bit of lag that's in there, I'm not really going to be hitting the power, and I'm not really going to be, you know, hitting that top speed that I want. So I set the car up for sort of mid-range power, but then again, I really want to just go down a long straight and see how fast I can go. Motorsport Park is a great facility. London is a great facility as well. I probably will turn the boost down a little bit for London Raceway, which I'll probably go to after I go to Motorsport Park, but expect another video in the next month when I try to get a spot at the track, because it's pretty busy at the moment because of COVID. Everyone wants to go out and race the car. So another month, we should be back on the track with the upgrade, and the videos will be a little bit more interesting. So instead of the car chugging away like an old car, like an old steam train, you know, it's terribly slow. The car's incredibly quick now. It's just when it gets on, it gets on. It finally has so much pull and so much torque. It's amazing. So yeah, that's where the car's at. And I guess, yeah, so we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. I'll probably post some more videos and some more updates, and you know, I'll take you guys for a tour around the car. So I haven't done that yet, but some of you can already see what the interior looks like based on the videos with the MFD that I've got in the Nismo cluster, and obviously the wheel and all the interior pieces are all quite nice. So yeah, look, I hope you enjoyed this video explanation of the car. It's a little bit of its history, what I've been doing with it, where I plan to take the car, and obviously now that we're back on track in terms of power and the car's done, there's nothing more that needs to be done with the car. It's done. Besides those little small things like tires and just the small adjustments, the mods are finished. The next step would be to then, if I want to increase the power later on, which I can, and I've still got room because the motor is pretty healthy, I can then change the setup and, you know, chase 260, 280, 290 if I choose to. But I want to get the balance right first and just get some more seat time, get some more experience. And then when I feel comfortable with the car and I know I can push it further and my experience goes with that, then I'll obviously just increase the power. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And look, I'll see you next time.